France 24. The British Sky News. The African Report. The American Atlantic Council Web. The Guardian newspaper. The African Intelligence. The Jerusalem Post newspaper. The German channel DW. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz. The Middle East Web. The New York Times. Whenever we do a research for the Libyan National Army, we found Saddam Haftar's name, the most prominent, in foreign and Arab media. Many people hurried to defame and devalue his status and described him as a murderer, criminal, and thief. Massive amount of hard currency has been deposited. Many ceaseless directed campaigns have been launched by the media and other suspected sides. Attempts to neutralize and take him away from the site haven't stopped. However, his reply was very puzzling and astonishing. By succeeding in successive missions, via working silently and endlessly, without paying attention to any distracting voices which sought to engage him in conflicts and useless arguments. He has established special units in the army that carried out military operations that had played a vital role in eradicating the terrorist guerrillas. Humanely, he was in the heart of the event, mobilized the energies and contributed to rescue operations in Derna. Saddam Haftar rarely speaks, but behind his silence, he hides a lot of works and ambitions. Not because he is the son of the National Army commander. The missions that had been tasked to him are enough to talk about him. His rivals see him as a trusted partner. His officers and his soldiers consider him as the rising leader. Since the beginning of his military role, he has become well known in eliminating the armed terrorist groups in Benghazi through Al-Karama operation, which was launched by the general leader of the Libyan army, the Marshal Khalifa Haftar, in 2014. In 2016, Saddam created one of the most important military formations in Libyan army, Tariq ibn Ziyad Battalion. After that, the battalion which he had developed became Tariq ibn Ziyad Brigade that had been leading the military operations on the ground to eradicate terrorists and outlaws. Saddam has acquired a military field experience, qualified him to become an effective commander in his early age. So he is the one who fought side by side with his battalion, where he has been injured in one of the confrontations in Benghazi during Al-Karama battle. His vision was to work on both building and preparing himself militarily by joining the consecutive domestic and abroad military courses, strengthening and backing the military structures according to the phase circumstances via local understanding and alliances. And after unsuccessful shuttling meetings for 5+5 committee, and due to its inability to achieve the required tasks completely, the rising young man Saddam Haftar was working according to the circumstances through secret meetings with figures from West Libya to solve the problems which are relative to the ground and seeking for realistic solutions for them. Therefore, he accomplished his goals in the sensitive and critical areas, which are related to the protection of the artificial river facilities, electricity and oil, which require common compatibility for the protection of citizens' rights and security. Saddam has succeeded in creating a new common force that consists of the 166th Battalion for Guarding and Securing, which is from Misrata, led by Muhammad al-Hissan, and from Tariq ibn Ziyad Brigade. Its mission is to secure the artificial river, which was regarded as an achievement which was welcomed by the American embassy in Libya. The international delegation regarded it as a crucial step. Saddam has carried out different visits where he met the soldiers to be aware of their conditions and demands. He keeps moving, so he sometimes travels a lot to Al Jafra base to meet the officers and soldiers there, scrutinize the readiness as well as the abilities of the forces to face the imminent threats, honor the officers, listen to their problems and demands, finally develop their abilities. Insert Saddam, with his soldiers and officers, contributed to restore the military forces to work, and he supplied them with available military equipment. His demand of choosing the rising military commands to lead the mission. On the other side, he follows up the city airport project, port, and governmental facility maintenance. From Sabah, the south capital, Saddam set out endowed with his stamina in order to inquire about the citizens' needs and demands, like fighting the crimes, which was the first priority, illegal immigration, weapons proliferation, how weavers sever disputes in the center of Sabah. The solution was in reconstruction and development with power and steadiness. Strong, well-disciplined military units, supported by determination and firmness. Many people are unaware that Saddam Haftar, with the support of the National Military Commands, was monitoring the military forces units' operations that are tasked to protect the oil fields in the depth of the desert. These fields are the only fortune for Libyans. He also did regular unexpected visits, listened to the soldiers' complaints, needs and challenges which are existed in the workflow. In addition to that, he had stayed with the soldiers for weeks, moving between the special units of security and protection. He has established a new campus for petroleum facilities guards in the south. The arrival of Saddam to Shuwairif region to interfere in the security conditions was very shocking image for many people. In addition to his prolonged meeting with the families, he had listened to their demands. The image showed Muhammad al-Hassan, the leader of 166 Battalion for Misrata in that area. The aim of that arrival is to protect the cities and villages from the flow of the artificial river water, lest not to be used by anyone else as a source of manipulation, pressure and citizens' water supply cutting. Saddam Haftar has taken a special interest in the south areas, so he paid it a wide attention to do checking visits to battalions and brigades in the border areas and oil fields. He directly supervised eradicating the Chinese buildings in al-Aranab after the Libyan army has carried out big incursions. He also succeeded in eradicating the area from smugglers and from foreigners of different nationalities. Saddam pursued the security operations there and the performed steps to secure the whole region, to take the companies back that had been working in this project and foreclose the housing units to the Libyan owners, not for illegal immigrants. No one expected the use of iron fist against crimes and drug dealers' dens. A lot of people were skeptical about the ability of the army of taking actions to eradicate crime dens in Budima and al-Wahishi regions. Transferring through these two areas every Thursday was considered a big risk, where drug trafficking was dealt publicly. Here, Saddam Haftar spearheaded a joint military and security operation targeting illegal armed factions. This meticulously coordinated operation was conducted with the objective of dismantling the strongholds of these outlawed groups situated in the regions of al-Wahishi and Budima in Benghazi. The operation successfully resulted in the apprehension of the leaders of these criminal networks, the destruction of drug trafficking booths, illicit distilleries, and the seizure and disposal of substantial quantities of cannabis, hallucinogenic pills, and alcoholic beverages. Gangs which have plagued the residents of Benghazi for many years These groups caused a significant threat to their lives, spreading terror and fear throughout the neighborhoods of their city. And they have indulged the youth into drugs, alcohol, and corruption. Consequently, citizens no longer feel safe in their own homes and with their families, unless they acquiesce to paying protection money or working on behalf of those criminal organizations. Thus, the decision to confront these gangs became an inevitable imperative. The efforts did not merely stop at cleansing the neighborhoods. Saddam had a vision for the regions following criminal eradication. Immediately, companies commenced operations to rehabilitate Boutima, opening pathways, paving roads, installing lighting, demolishing irregular structures, and constructing mini football fields for the youth. One hand builds while the other confronts the criminals. A war against human traffickers. With the surge in the flow of undocumented migrants to Libya, human traffickers in the north of the country have intensified their activities, engaging in human trafficking operations and accruing substantial profits by trafficking these migrants to Europe across the Mediterranean Sea. Saddam took action by targeting these outlawed gangs, confronting them through his leadership and presiding over the operations room, headed by the Chief of Staff of the Ground Forces. Under direct orders from the Supreme Commander, a plan contributed to by Saddam was put into action along the entire southern border and the eastern frontiers, employing over 2,000 multifunctional military vehicles. He also addressed the significant onslaught from undocumented migrants and African smuggling gangs. The city of Tobruk became the stage for the largest migrant cleansing operation, where more than 10,000 migrants of various nationalities were deported. He personally oversaw the military operations in the south. The Air Force under the command of the Army launched precise strikes targeting Chadian opposition fighters along the Libyan border. Subsequently, the armed forces initiated an airborne operation near the Kalinga Mountains, close to the Chadian border, executing specific combat missions as part of a plan to cleanse the southwest of armed groups. All of this occurred in continuous and effective coordination with the Air Force, which maintained ongoing aerial reconnaissance operations through an air cover over the operational area. A precise operation with specific targets. The operation was successful in securing the southern border, expelling Chadian opposition members and their families from desert areas they had settled, approximately 300 kilometers north of the border. Saddam, the Humanitarian. On September 11, 2023, Libya faced a major crisis and catastrophe. Thousands of people perished as a result of Hurricane Daniel, which struck extensive areas of Libya, leading to widespread destruction and damage to the infrastructure and displacing survivors from their homes. The city of Derna bore the brunt of this disaster. It was imperative for the national military leader, Saddam Haftar, to be among the first to initiate rescue efforts for those trapped, recover the victims, and support those affected by the disaster. A disaster relief committee was formed in the initial hours following Hurricane Daniel. The head of the Joint Security Chamber in Benghazi, the commander of Ground Forces Operations, Brigadier General Saddam Haftar, was promoted to the rank of Major General in the Army following his successful management of the crisis. His promotion recognized his performance and efficiency in dealing with a major natural disaster, a rare occurrence in the region. This newly formed committee bore the heaviest of responsibilities, managing the Derna crisis and finding immediate solutions to the disaster that had struck the city. From the outset, Saddam Haftar personally oversaw the search and rescue operations conducted by military units of the Libyan army, alongside security forces and rescue teams. Saddam Haftar inspected the devastated neighborhoods accompanied by leaders from the armed forces. He monitored the work of all maritime and terrestrial rescue teams, which focused on saving individuals trapped under the rubble of buildings and retrieving the bodies of victims recovered from both land and sea. He followed the search and rescue operations utilizing marine sonar devices, robotic submarines, and specialized equipment designed for search efforts. He met with Libyan officials and foreign delegations that arrived in the city to offer advice, observations, and humanitarian support. He convened with teams from Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Turkey, and others to coordinate rescue and recovery efforts in Derna. He facilitated the dispatch of convoys to the city, which included professional divers, special canine search teams, and communication groups. He also oversaw the provision of aid and assistance to the survivors and those affected by the floods and torrents in Derna, supervising the distribution of food supplies. Additionally, he managed the dispatch of relief convoys providing shelter assistance to the displaced residents of the city who had moved to Al-Marj and its surrounding areas. Thrown with a stone, it yields the sweetest fruit. All these actions and achievements were met with significant attacks and defamation against Saddam Haftar by dubious entities. Their goal is to keep Libya in a state of chaos and to sideline the emerging young leaders who are relied upon to build the country. The accusations and criticisms continued against the man who works tirelessly and does not pay attention to anyone. He is seen as someone who speaks little but acts much. His calm demeanor hides a great deal of wisdom, patience, and foresight. Various accusations were leveled against Saddam, at times for establishing relations with Israel, and at other times for being responsible for corruption in Libya and the theft of central bank funds. The hidden agenda behind these accusations was to distract the attention of Libyans. These accusations aimed to overshadow all of Saddam's efforts in combating terrorist groups and criminal gangs, as well as his endeavors in building the military institution. Notably, his outstanding role in Derna was also obscured. Saddam Haftar's response was surprising to everyone. He didn't pay attention to all those smear campaigns, nor did he attempt to defend himself through justification, statements, or insinuations. Instead, he met all those accusations with resolute silence, continuing his achievements and efforts in rescue operations and supporting the survivors of the Derna disaster. During his interview with Sky News correspondent Alex Crawford, his response was brief and very concise, simply stating, "Everything is fine." Saddam Haftar didn't just stop at monitoring what was happening on the ground or providing assistance to the locals, nor did he limit himself to what the local authorities and international committees provided in terms of assistance and support to Libyans. He intensified his efforts even further in search and rescue operations. You would see him here, on the deck of a naval boat, above the waters that submerged the city, personally overseeing the operations with Libyan naval officers. And here he is, engaging in conversation with a Libyan, listening to their situation, demands, and opinion regarding the army's assistance to the locals. And here he is, accompanied by the commander of the 166th Battalion, Mohammed Al-Hassan, on an inspection tour of the neighborhoods of Derna to follow up on the ground situation in the city. While Saddam worked silently and responded only through action on the ground, voices emerged affirming Saddam's innocence of all those accusations and fabrications. The response came from the former governor of the Libyan Central Bank, Ali al-Hibri, who stated that Saddam Haftar had no involvement in the alleged seizure of Libyan funds from the Libyan bank. Similarly, the deputy prime minister of the Didaiba government, Ramadan Boujna, gave testimony in favor of Saddam, describing him in a public gathering as a respectable figure and a well-mannered young man distorted by the media.
صدام حفتر أبداً أنا جلست معه والله العظيم شخصية محترمة جداً جداً.
However, it is Saddam's actions on the ground that defend him and refute all those misleading accusations. Many deeds without words. Achievements that unsettled his adversaries, the purveyors of false promises. So, look with your own eyes and unleash your mind to understand who is working to uplift Libya and protect its interests, and who is destroying it and leading it to ruin. There's a stark difference between those who unite the army and its brigades, and those who seek to dismantle it with conflicting militias and gangs. There's a distinction between those who fight lawlessness and sabotage hideouts and eradicate them, and those who collude with foreigners to spread chaos and destruction in the country. Between those who stand themselves to rescue victims and lend a helping hand to survivors, and those who leave them alone to an unknown fate while seeking their personal interests. And between those who put all their weight and effort into rebuilding cities, and those who seek ways to plunder projects and smuggle their funds into offshore bank accounts.